Well, hello, friend, and welcome to another episode of Van Life Living in New York. I'll tell you, I came down here to the river and I had my mind on this rock, but I'll tell you, I'm pretty sure this was the rock unless it's down further, but it was attached to the land, and now with the water up because of the dam release, well, it's just not the same. I had to kind of climb out some rocks to get here and try not to fall. Anyway, friend, I wanted to come on here. There's a gentleman that's on my TikTok channel that asked me to talk about my past a little bit and my version of what hell is, right? What hell was, because when I read Jesus, I don't think of hell there, because there's things that he said that you'll know that the kingdom is here, but so is hell, and he was telling you he came for those in need of a doctor. So if you're in need of a doctor, then hear what I'm saying, and if you agree, that's great. If you don't want to try it, that's all right. You have free will. But there is a debt at the end of the age, and Christ did tell us everything. Everything he said was true. So there is a law, and because there is a law, there are consequences. So there is a debt at the end of all this, at the end of the age, as he said there would be. But you can't find the kingdom unless you believe what Christ said is true, right? So I'm going to tell you how it was that I was in hell and how it was I got out. Okay, so when I was a little kid, real young, I don't remember the exact age, I was preteen. It was definitely like somewhere between 7 and 9. I ended up in a situation where, as a child, someone took advantage of me sexually. And because of that, well, at the time, I didn't realize the damage that was being done, because when you're that young, you don't even comprehend what's going on. And so, but as you get older, that all starts to materialize, right? The moment you hit puberty and you start talking among your friends about stuff. And I'm not a person that grew up around a bunch of people that were like evolved in thought, right? And because I was a person that, because of these things that happened to me, I had low self-esteem, I was hiding secrets, and I didn't feel good about myself. And I'm going to explain this to you now psychologically, but understand I didn't have a clue what was going on when I was a kid, right? This is from time in my secret place, spending time with God, looking over my life and looking to see why I did what I did and how to change my life. The problem is, if you don't believe in Christ and you don't believe that you have forgiveness and you're not willing to give other people forgiveness, then you can't look back on your life without getting hung up in the hell that it was, right? So I can talk to you about it now and who I was and what happened. And I don't go into great detail. I never talk about what the other people did as far as who they were. Because here's the truth, friend. Making other people's crosses heavier doesn't make mine any lighter. And the truth is that hurt people, and that's the reason they're hurting people. This is what we've been doing to each other since time began, and there comes a time where we're supposed to stop. And unfortunately, probably not till after hell comes, right? Because that's what the end of the age is. Our selfishness is going to kill us all, a good bit of us. That's just the way it is, nothing personal. It'll probably kill me too, I don't know. My father doesn't tell me for sure whether I'm going to live or die. I promised him a death, but then there's a long story behind that, and maybe I'll give you some of that on this video. So when I was a little kid, I didn't even love myself, right? I didn't know what had been done to me at first, but it didn't take too long to start figuring it out, and I was keeping secrets, because when people do things like that to you, they have a way, whether they mean to or not, of getting you to keep your secrets, right? So a lot of you folks out there that are in hell, you're in hell because you kept your secrets and you didn't get knowledge that you needed, or you grew up in a family that didn't have what you needed in order to give you a different kind of life. And I'm not making a judgment on it, friend. I'm just telling you I was in that boat. So I'm not judging other people for it. And I had good parents, but it's a long story and I can't give it all to you here. But anyway, So I was keeping secrets, and because I had no boundaries, I didn't have boundaries as a kid, right? So, and I didn't understand anything. I felt bad inside all the time. I didn't know why I felt bad. I just felt bad, right? And when I became a teenager and I had these secrets and I hung out, you got to remember that you can tell by my gray hair that I'm not this new age folks, right? That I kind of grew up when judgment was a little more of a reality, and love was for those that loved you a lot of times. Not that my folks were that way, but a lot of people in my life. And well, you can understand that when you don't feel good about yourself, you don't hang out with people that feel good about themselves, right? Necessarily. I'm not saying they felt bad about themselves. If you're a person I grew up with, well, I don't know what your life's like now. Mine was hell. And now it's not. I have the kingdom that Christ promised me, right? So, but I have it because I choose love over selfishness. When I went to school, because I didn't like me, other people didn't like me, and people picked on me so they could feel better about themselves. See, our children are hurting each other because hurt people hurt people. So when you don't teach your child how to love and forgive others and teach them self-worth, and that they have self-worth no matter what anybody else says, well, then they have a chance of ending up in hell like I did. And so because of that, I really had a lot of problems. And when I got into very early teens, I discovered alcohol and drugs. And I discovered that even though I hated myself and I thought I was ugly and women wouldn't want nothing to do with me, a couple beers later and I thought I was Don Juan. So I started drinking. Well, drinking became my master, right? With those drugs and all that. And I became dependent on them to numb the pain and to let myself feel joy. But the problem was that sooner or later, that stuff gets catched. It's a double-edged sword. Sooner or later, you start doing things that you know are wrong, you regret them, and then once you do them, once you sober up, then your problem is now instead of being a better person, now you're even worse. And the only way to hide from yourself and the things you do is to go get more alcohol and drugs, right? So, or some people get addicted to food. Everybody has their preferred addictions, friend. Some people, they're addicted to work. That's what I changed my addiction to later, right? But we're all doing different things, and I'm not here to tell you what's right or wrong. And I often talk about hell, about the feelings, about the worthlessness, about how I used to look at the speck in your eye so that I didn't have to look at the plank in my own. But this kingdom isn't something I found. By 19, I was in rehab because I started going to AA when I was 16 because I knew that I had a problem. I didn't drink like my other friends. So what did I do? I traded in those friends for friends that were more like me, that liked to drink a lot, right? Birds of a feather flock together. And that's what I did. So I ended up in rehab, and that's where I got rid of my secrets. I'll be quite honest with you. That's where I started to change. I didn't change, but I became better because I started, for one thing is a 12-step program tells you have to believe in God. When I was a kid, my parents made me go to church, but about 12 years old, I remember sitting in church with my mom. We were in their in a kitchen. It was just me and her. And I told her, I said, I don't believe in God. And she was like, what? Why not? I said, there's no way that there's a God of love with everything that goes on in this world. Now, she had no clue about the things because I was keeping my secrets. She didn't know that I was already in mental hell at 12 years old and keeping secrets. And because nowadays, being gay is much more acceptable. But understand the sexual abuse that I experienced was from a male, and that means that when they were calling people gay, that was the only sexual experience I had was with a man, right? So therefore, in my mind, they were talking about me, and therefore, when I went to those hellfire and brimstone churches that weren't teaching the love and forgiveness of Christ, even though they were, but I wasn't hearing that. I was only hearing all this hellfire and brimstone because that's the way they try to get you saved. And I'm not saying all churches are like that, but this one particular one that I was going to growing up made me fear God, something terrible, and I didn't need fear, I needed love. I get that you have to fear God if you're not going to love him, but they weren't explaining Jesus to me at all, right? They were just traditional church, bunch of hypocrisy and babble that really had nothing to do with what I needed in order to get out of hell. And because they were saying gay people were evil and that they were going to go to hell and all that, well then here I was, a little kid, thinking that I was evil and going to go to hell, and didn't think I was going to be able to find a way out. And I thought, this isn't the God that I want to serve. I mean, he's the one who put me in this position, right? So I had a really distorted idea of what reality was growing up. And I was trying to be a tough guy because I hung out with some of the guys that I hung out with were pretty tough. But I was by no means the alpha male of the group. I was the one toward the love, even in any pack, if you have a gang of men, like you have these gangs in the cities or wherever. Even in kids, there becomes an alpha male and then the followers, and there comes a pack identity. It doesn't matter even in corporations. It's the same thing. You've got the alpha males and the ones that aren't so alpha, and I was the one that wasn't so alpha, right? So when I get drunk and hurt people, I wasn't even taking on the alpha male because I knew because I was a coward. That's the truth. I'm not here to tell you I was something special and that I was some badass. I wasn't. I was a coward trying to look like a badass. I didn't even want to be that, but I didn't know how to be anything else because I was so scared and alone and angry, and I didn't know how to get out of it, and Christ taught me. But because I didn't believe in the church, and even though I went back to church after church over the years, none of them were talking about Jesus hardly. They say a couple quotes of Jesus, but hardly anything at all. So I never found anything worth keeping. So I started studying. God did send me to this one church that was just pathetic, to be quite honest with you. But in their little church store was this red letter edition of a Bible. And I bought that thing, and I started reading the words in red, because even though I didn't believe in the Bible, I believed in Jesus to an extent. And him dying and saying that he was going to die, and now there's plenty of proof. And if you really want to know my Father, he will come to you if you get to doing what the Son asked. But see, I didn't understand. I started off trying to understand the wrong things. Because I hated myself, I was full of pride. Doesn't make sense, does it? So because I hated myself, I would look at the speck in your eye so that I didn't have to look at the plank in my own. So since I hated me, the only way to feel better about me is look down at other people. So when I felt bad, I would look at other people and say, oh, I'm better than them, I'm not that bad. But that allowed my thought of Satan to do a lot of things that hurt people that I wouldn't look at, because that's why he had me looking at the speck in their eye so that I would not look at the plank in my own. And because I really didn't believe in Jesus yet, really believe in Jesus, I didn't believe in forgiveness, and therefore anytime I looked at the speck and the plank in my eye, it hurt like hell. I felt terrible, and I went back to doing what I was doing. And every time I did seek Jesus out, because I didn't understand his message, every time he would cast the demons from me, the guilt and sin, all these thoughts that caused me suffering, I would get better for a moment. But because I kept leaving my house sit empty, the demons kept returning and bringing friends, that guilt and that sin. And then I would hide my thoughts from God. So I think of me as just as like Adam and Eve in the garden. That when I hide my thoughts from God, then I'm going to have to go back into the darkness. But there was reasons I stayed in the darkness, right? I didn't want you all to know who I was. I was trying to be a businessman, because even though when I got sober for a while, I stayed sober 8 years, and I started a business, and I ended up with a decent life and started to have faith, but then it all went wrong. And I really got angry at God because I thought he did it to me. But it was really me doing it to myself, because I still wasn't at the place where I was really ready to humble myself. This kingdom takes humility, friend, and humility isn't something you say you have. It means that you accept that you are in the Father's in you, and every person on this planet is a child of God. I don't care whether you're alpha male or the fish on the bottom of the tank. I use that because I had these African cichlids, and the alpha male ran the top of the tank, and the guy that had the least would be at the bottom of the tank, and they each had their layer in the tank. They were very interesting to watch. They reminded me of the human race an awful lot. So what I started learning was I started trying to do what Jesus asked, and I started doing things like he said. I wasn't really believing in him, but I was trying to because I believed there was something to him. So I started doing the things he asked. But in the midst of all that, my life was going wrong. And I wasn't that far along on the journey at that point. And I prayed to God. I have self-employed for probably, 8 years at that point or something. And I prayed to God and asked for an answer about a business decision that he made very clear. I mean, there was just no way that he wasn't telling me to make it, and it's a long story. Maybe I'll give it to you a little bit because it is kind of relevant later on. I was going to make a business decision that was going to cost me a lot of money, and it was a huge risk. Life is full of risk. If you're going to succeed either at the world or finding the kingdom, it's going to take risk, right? If you want safety, you'll never find this kingdom or anything in the world because your thought of Satan in your head, which is your thought of selfishness and fear, will always come up with a scenario that'll keep you from doing anything worthwhile, whether it's good or make money or anything. That's just what that thought of Satan does. Now, it can also turn you evil if you become prideful, and then you have the other things that I talk about. You know, of the people in this world that are hurting each other and they don't care, and their hearts are hard, like mine used to be, right? So, but Jesus will give you a heart of flesh, and then you have to quit hurting people, or else you have to hide your thoughts from God again. And that's what happened. I thought my father was giving me serpents, and he was giving me fish. You know, I thought he was giving me scorpions and he was giving me eggs. I just saw that one again in the Bible yesterday because I thought he was giving me stones and he was giving me bread, right? So, because if you're going to follow God, he's got a greater plan for you that's going to show up. But it's going to require faith, and it's going to require you letting go of the world and choosing him over the world. If you're not ready to do that, friend, it's going to be a rough ride because the less humility you have, the more he has to humble you to get you ready to do anything he wants to do with you. So if you think you have to be anything special and you start seeking God's will, well, you might end up down a rabbit hole that's a very bumpy road like I did. But it turns out it was all worthwhile, even though I was mad and angry at him at the time, because what happened was I found this kingdom, and now I have this thing that Jesus called the kingdom, because I believe every word Jesus said. Contrary to most churches, I believe every word Jesus said. But the Holy Spirit has testified to me about him, and so therefore I believe everything Jesus said. Jesus said that he who saves his life will lose it, but he who loses it for my sake will gain it. So that means if you're not willing to die for my Father, if you're not willing to sacrifice everything, you're not going to get everything for it. But to him that much is given, much is required, and him that gives nothing, even what he has will be taken away. So you start making commitments to God, you better be ready to fulfill them, friend. That's all I'm telling you. I'm not lying to you about that at all, right? I got to change positions here. I ought to put these, I'm wearing my Crocs today, but I ought to put the ankle piece on so that they don't fall off this rock and into the water, because I am literally right on this top of this rock where I could fall off either way pretty easily. Me and God, we do adventures because I have the Holy Spirit and he talks to me and I talk to him, and everybody thinks I'm nuts. I spend most of my time in the woods, friend. That's the truth. And I really don't care, because what other people think of me is none of my business, right? That's what Jesus taught me. If I'm going to love him, if I come to love him more than the world's going to hate me for it, and somebody might kill me thinking they're doing God a favor. He showed me the truth is true. So the more you want, the more you're going to have to give, and the more you give, the more upset other people might get, right? They killed Jesus for a reason. Make no mistake. They saw him as a threat. Anybody that speaks outright truth becomes a threat to the world. And people will hate you for it. It's just the way it is. So if you want a truth worth serving, you better be willing to give up everything. And at first you won't be. It's a journey. I've always told you that Jesus said, the kingdom is like a journey. It's like a mustard seed. It starts off the tiniest of all seeds, but as you do what he asks, you will grow into a mustard tree. If you do this, if you get to know Christ and believe what I'm saying is true, which that only wise people can believe what other people say are true, right? I didn't have wisdom. I was smart enough to learn from my mistakes after a long period of time, right? But I was not very good at gaining the wisdom by listening to others and then making the right decisions. And therefore, I had a hell of a life, and I mean a hell of a life. So, but on the other hand, at the end of it, I now have the kingdom. I live in peace, joy, and love most of the time. When I still get angry, but now I realize I don't want to be angry. My thought of Satan, which is the thought of selfishness in my head, it wants me to justify my anger. If I do that, I'm going to suffer. So I have a choice. Do I want to be happy? Do I want to be right? Or do I want to be, happy means not judging you. I'll tell you the truth on this camera. I'll call you all hypocrites to the church because that's what my father told me I had to do. I'll get into that as we go. But I'm not judging you. I'm just telling you the truth. And since I'm talking on a camera, you don't have to take any judgment from it because I don't know you. So therefore, I can't judge you. But I'm telling you right now, there's a lot of people in the church that are going to be cast into the darkness to pay all that's due because they won't enter the kingdom and they won't let you enter either. And Christ warned you about that. So if you're listening to these Christian Pharisees and they won't let you enter the kingdom, you need to find some people that have it. The kingdom I talk about is peace, love, and joy. It means that I make mistakes, but I don't hide my thoughts from God. So when I make a mistake, I will go, Lord, look at this. See this thought I'm having? Because I'll get these lustful thoughts. I was addicted to porn, all kind of stuff. Because, as I told you when I was a young kid, because of that sexual experience, you can imagine that as an adult, I became addicted to sex because when I was having sex with women, then I didn't feel like I was gay, right? So I was very promiscuous, and sometimes I never did things to hurt women intentionally. When I quit drinking, I did try to beat up a girlfriend in one of my drunken blackouts earlier on. I was becoming a really not good person. I'm not lying to you there. And I was so ashamed of myself, I went to rehab. I knew that I couldn't quit drinking. Every time I got sober, I was drunk again in 2 weeks. There was just no way I could go without alcohol. I was so much pain and suffering in my mind, I had to get that fixed. And because I did not believe in Christ and forgiveness, I had to go about another way of finding it. Because Christ is the solution to almost every problem on this planet, and he gave you the answer, but if you don't believe in him, you can't have that solution. So I'm always telling you, there's this wonderful kingdom, but you have to believe. And those that say, there's a lot of people that say they believe, but they feel guilty all the time. Let me promise you, anybody that feels guilty all the time, including you, if you feel guilty all the time for everything you've done, you really don't believe in Jesus. You have left your house sit empty and the demons have returned and bring friends. And they're haunting you, and you don't have to, though. I'm telling you, you can let them go. Forget all that. Go back to Christ. This time, don't leave your house sit empty and start doing the things Christ asked. Get around people that know Christ. And I'm not saying you have to go to church to do it. I found them working in the mental health field, out feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, visiting the sick in prison. The people that were truly of the Christ, that's where they're at. They're out doing what Christ asked. And they're finding great joy in it. And because they taught me that that was a worthy thing, I did it, right? But my father had to humble me a very hard way to get me there. So anyway, I lost my business because of what my father told me to do, and it's a long story, and I don't want to go into it because it'll go too long. But in the end, that my father told me to go ask a man for money, which I refused to do, and I told him he had to give me a direct answer. He did in a way that I couldn't deny. I went and did it. And in the end, that man had to forgive me $29,000 worth of debt because I lost my business and plummeted it into the ground. It's a long story, and I don't need to go into the detail. There are videos with everything in it from a long time ago. So you can look through my stuff and you will find the whole story in detail. But I was never good at learning love. And I've never been good at loving people because I was selfish and because I didn't trust people, because I'd been betrayed. The only people I really trusted were my parents, to be quite honest with you. And I did things growing up. I ended up almost in a gang fight where we would have killed people, and it's a long story. So I'm not this guy that's lived this wonderful life. And if I would have, when we showed up for that gang fight, if they would have been there that night, people would have died because I was willing to kill and I was willing to die in order to keep the few friends I had, because this is the problem. When you don't love yourself, when you don't like yourself, you'll do whatever you have to keep the friends you've got. So if you've got kids and you're not teaching them love and forgiveness and they get in with the wrong group, they will kill to keep their friends. If they get into like a gang situation, and it's not that they'll mean to. I dreaded that night. The night before, I knew it was coming, but I still armed myself and went, because there's no way this guy that hated himself, keeping all these secrets, was going to let the couple friends he had go. So I was willing to sacrifice everything and serve a life sentence. Not because I was smart, because I was a stupid teenager that didn't have a brain cell one. That's the truth, right? When we're kids, we don't know any better. And when we hang out with other folks, it can be a dangerous thing. Kids, my dad always said that the fact that any male of the species lives to live to be 25 is a miracle, which is true. If you had a childhood like mine, it's a miracle you're alive, right? Because I did a lot of stuff that was risky. I mean, I used to race, just do stupid things. I mean, really stupid things, friend. But you know what? It wasn't that I wanted to do them, but I wanted to impress those people so bad because I hated myself so much that I would sacrifice everything, no matter what, in order to keep the few friends I had. So you get that. So I hope if you're a parent, you're thinking about how important it is to teach your children right and to make sure that they love themselves. I'm not saying do this parenting thing that's going on now where you don't give your children measure, because those people, their children are headed for prison because they don't give a damn about their kids because they let them do whatever they want. This whole wussy parenting doesn't work. Nothing personal, friend. I love you even if you do it. And I'm not talking about violence. When Jesus said, or actually in the Bible it said, spare the rod, spoil the child. A rod was a Jewish measuring stick. So spare the measure, spoil the child. I don't care how you correct those children, but if you don't give them correction and you just let them yell and scream at you, they're going to do it to other people when they become adults. And then because you permitted it there, they won't be able to keep jobs, they won't be able to keep friends. And if they do keep friends, it's going to be people that have the same communication skill, that can only yell and backstab each other, and they won't have a good life. They won't be able to hang out with loving people because they will be incapable of it. So if you're a parent, I'm hoping you're thinking about these things. I did not. I was married to a woman that had 4 children. They paid the price of my stupidity. Father, forgive me, for I know not what I do. I've apologized to them, right? In this process, I had to lay my gift down at the altar and go make amends to some people. I haven't cleaned up the wreckage of all my past. There is a reason that God comes to give you forgiveness. If you're like me, you will never even figure out where it all was. That's how bad my life was. I just wasn't this great guy. But I love all of them, and I love everybody I hurt, and I love everybody that hurt me, because those people that hurt me were the same way as I am. They are hurt people hurting people, and I confronted those that I needed to in my life, including the abuse when I was a kid. And I learned that hurt people are hurt people, and I forgive that person. It's over. I don't need to be angry at them, right? Because they had to suffer just like I did with all the hell in their mind. I'm hoping that because I called them out and confronted them, I'm hoping they went and got the help that they needed in order to change their life. Whether they did or not, I'd have no idea. But I know this: hate just kills me. Resentment is like eating rat poison, trying to kill the other person. The only person that'll end up dying is me. It'll be dying in spirit. And then because I'm dying, I'll hate everyone else, and then that rat poison will turn against myself. So Christ is the truth and the life and the way, and those that follow him. It's not easy. I didn't just forgive people. I've had people steal a lot of money from me and a lot of different things, just like I didn't mean to, but I stole that $29,000 from that man. You can call it that, but I went to him and he forgave me my debt. He was one of the most Christ-like men I ever met. It turns out my father wanted me to go get the money from him because he wanted me to get that experience. He was one of the people that made me seek this kingdom. He was a Christian. He was a Mennonite. I don't follow Mennonites. I don't know what they believe. I've met some Mennonites and they're all wonderful people. In fact, my mom was go to his Mennonite church every now and then. So I'm not saying they're not wonderful people, but I am a follower of Christ and Christ alone. He is my king and I am his servant. He is my master and I am his servant. But I'm his master, I'm his servant because he's the only master worth serving. He loves me because my Father loves me. And if you've seen my other videos, you'll understand more of that. So the purpose of the world is to come to know love by experience, and I've just accepted that is the truth. But I have to carry out this mission that my Father's given me, because one night, in the midst of trying to figure this all out, I got so angry one night. I said, I don't care if you whip, beat, and crucify me. You give me the truth or you kill me now. And a death showed up in my mind, and a voice showed up, the Holy Spirit, more than it's ever has. I haven't just tried to seek God out, the voice of the Holy Spirit, but I failed every time because I didn't know Jesus. And without Jesus, you can be deceived by Satan. Now, some people will say I'm being deceived by Satan because I call out the church. That is why I tell you I am the spirit of Judas, and that Jesus and Judas created Yom Kippur. Because my Father told me it's my job to do it, just as Judas betrayed Christ then because he had to, because Jesus took his bread, which was his body, and he sopped it in his blood, which was his wine, and he passed it to Judas, and when he handed it to Judas, it said Satan entered into him. Satan entered into him because he wasn't there to begin with. There's a whole thing going on. Then Judas said, not me, Lord, and he said, go do what you must do. He cast him from the lot. He cast him into the wilderness. Judas is your wilderness goat. But because Christ passed Satan into him, and he did that, and then Satan did the one thing that he's not allowed to do, according to, with Job, he killed Judas, right? So Judas died for a death that if he wouldn't had Satan passed into him, he wouldn't have committed. What does that do? It gives Judas a loophole in the law for my Father, because, make no mistake, my Father is the greatest lawyer ever. There's not a lawyer on this planet that could understand how great my Father's law is and how he's written loopholes into it. So the only reason that I'm willing to judge you on this camera, knowing that I'm not allowed to judge, is because my Father has showed me I am the spirit of Judas. There's a loophole in the law, and therefore I have to speak the truth. Not all warm and fuzzy. Tell you the outright truth. If you will not forgive, you will not be forgiven. By your words, you will be acquitted, and by your words, you will be condemned. You're not going to be perfect, but if you're not willing to spend time in your secret place and look at your thoughts with God and let him show you what's right and what's wrong, and then when you do something wrong, be willing to leave your gift at the altar, go make amends with whoever it is, and then come back and give your gift, which is your time in your secret place, well, then you're never going to have this relationship with God in any kind of meaningful way. So if you're not going to do what Christ asked and follow him, you're never going to find this kingdom that I'm talking about. You will get glimpses of it, but Satan will steal it from you over and over, because he's in your head, and anybody that says he isn't is a liar. Your pride is your thought of Satan. Your Loathing is your thought of Satan. It's a liar. It was a liar in the beginning. It'll be a liar in the end. And the only person that can save you from it is Christ. And he gave you the way out, but you have to abide in what he said. He said, those that hear my sayings and put them into practice will build their house on a rock. My friend, he will show you a kingdom far greater than anything this world has. I have it right here, yet I have nothing. I'm sitting on a rock in a river with nothing. You get that, right? Most people despise me. Even the people that used to love me don't love me anymore because they don't understand the things I say. And because a lot of them are Christian and I judge Christians, they don't like me. So I had to sacrifice every relationship almost in my life in order to do this for my father. But my father's worth it. And I'm not judging you. I'm talking to a camera. So I'm not really technically judging you. I'm actually judging the camera, which is me looking at myself on the screen. So I'm actually looking at the plank in my eye. Because, friend, I got a big one all the time. You know, just the other day I had to lay my gift down at the altar and go make amends to somebody. I still do. Plenty of times. I'm not perfect. Never claimed to be. But I'm telling you, you don't have to be perfect. You have to believe in God and believe what Jesus said is true. Start doing what he asked, and you will find his kingdom. And if you don't leave your house sit empty, the demons won't return and bring friends. If you know that thought in your head, if you try to pretend that's not Satan, then you're going to be deceived. You are divine in nature. Die to vine fruit. In your head is the fruit of two vines. If you won't accept your selfishness as Satan, you'll never get out of hell. However, you're never going to be perfect either, because I have to be selfish enough to eat, selfish enough to do whatever it is my father tells me to do. I'm kind of an unusual individual because I have an unusual task for my father. So I've given up everything. I don't know anything anymore. And I'm at war with the corporations, as I've told you, because they are the thought of Satan made flesh. They're pure selfishness, and we're sacrificing our children on the altar to our corporate gods. The reason we're not teaching our children rightly is because we're too scared and selfish to look at the truth of who we are. I was. I'm not blaming you, friend. We're all got to take the blame, but this is all going down all wrong, and everybody's feeling it in their gut. There's just nobody that doesn't know that we're about to land in hell on this planet. It doesn't matter which way it comes. There's 1,000 ways for it to come, and my father showed me it's coming. And he showed me some other things. And I'm not going into it on this video. But I'm telling you, friend, we're going to pay our debt as a human race for our arrogance and our ignorance and our overabundance of selfishness and our lack of loving our neighbor. And Christ told you it was coming. And those of you that will not help him bring the kingdom will pay the debt you owe, period. I don't care whether you said you know Jesus or not. That was a lie, the biggest lie ever. Those serpents are serpents. They tell you grace and grace alone. If you were the thief on the cross and you did it on your death and you couldn't go do the works, well then yeah, you got the kingdom by grace. But if you were overcome by your thought of Satan, which is your thought of selfishness, and it lied to you and you didn't get to know Christ and do what he asked, then you don't know how to tell the difference between God and Satan. And therefore, you are going to pay your debt. You chose selfishness over love, not my father. This is what we did on our own, not what my father did. He told us not to do it, gave us 10 commandments to live by, and we wouldn't live by one of them. And then Christians became liars and lied to themselves. I get it. I was lying to myself. I'm not judging you for it. But it's time that if you're going to find this kingdom, you better look for it. Because if not, my father's going to say, I don't know you if you don't know him. And if you know the Father, it's because you know the Son. Because the Son came to represent the Father. And I've done videos on that. I just did one unveiling Christ in the beginning. You can go look at that and see exactly how accountable you are. Up to you, friend. You have a free will choice. But anyway, so most of my life you won't believe the things that God does for me, and everybody will call it coincidence. But all I can tell you is my Father takes care of me, and every time I don't get what I need, I know I didn't need it, that I needed to go through something hard in order to, when at the end of my life, all I want to do is look back upon my life with God and see the picture that me and him created together and know that I gave him love all the while, because that's the only reason I was created, was so that he could know love by experience. But he also wants us to do that too. That was what the fruit in the garden was about. We chose to know love by experience. and every day we eat the fruit. So stop blaming Adam and Eve and start taking responsibility for you eating the fruit. And then you'll stop hiding your thoughts from God. That's what's really going on. You don't even know you're doing it. Because the way the church lays this out, they hide it from you. They act like you're not accountable. Bullshit. I don't normally cuss on here. I try not to, friend. But I'm calling bullshit on the church and their grace alone. You get that? Because it is absolutely bullshit. And I'm tired of listening to it. You receive the kingdom by grace, but the only way to keep it is to give it away. You want to know my Father? You get to know the Son. You get a red letter edition of the Bible and read what Jesus said and read. Let me show you. I want to thank this guy, Discerning Tape Reader, I think, gave me these. Because I don't have any money, I don't have a job, I'm fighting corporations, all the while knowing I'm going to probably go to my cross. So I put out a thing on videos a while back that I'd like some Bibles, because I meet people in the woods out here and I talk Jesus with them. Sometimes they believe in Jesus, sometimes they don't. But it doesn't matter, I still talk Jesus, right? I'm testifying as Jesus told me to. Sometimes I don't. It depends on the Father and the Holy Spirit and what the Holy Spirit tells me to do. But the cool thing about these little Bibles are, they're red letter edition, friend. So everything Jesus said is in red. And so that way I can tell people, if you want the kingdom, get to know this Jesus, and then you'll find it. Because I'm always telling you that, friend. Moses and Paul ain't getting you the kingdom. Christ gave it to you. You have to dig it up. It's in his words. He is the treasure. He is the pearl of great price, the perfect pearl. And if you follow him, you'll find something greater, because the thoughts that right now cause you suffering won't. When I get angry, I all of a sudden realize that if I keep that angry thought, that I'm going to go back to suffering. And then I say, Father, help me remove this thought of anger from me. Because you gave me forgiveness, I'll give forgiveness to them. Period. That's it. But it's hard to make that choice when it's all you've ever made is anger, anger, anger. Judgment, judgment, judgment. So when you start down this path, it does start as a mustard seed. I've never been lying to you telling you how easy this is. It just isn't. But nothing in life is easy, right? Nothing in life worthwhile is easy. You're going to fail forward fast, whether you're seeking the world or the kingdom. And if you don't give up when you fail, you will find what you're looking for. But if you're seeking the world at this point, you're going to pay your debt. So this is the time to be a kingdom seeker. I'm telling you, you go about it the same way that these people that are seeking the world do. Put my Father first. Believe every word Jesus said was true. If you don't believe what I said it the way I say it, go come up with your own. Trust God to give it to you. I know that mine is awfully hard, and I got here over a period of time. The things that I'm telling you now, I wouldn't have even believed myself. I would have called myself a liar, right? I didn't believe I could ever be happy, joyous, and free in my life. I never thought I would come to a place where I didn't need everyone else's approval just to not feel like killing myself. That's why I was being what I was being. I was trying to get other people's approval, except I didn't feel worth it. But now I don't need that because I'm in relationship with my Father. But if I don't do the things my Father asks, I will hide my thoughts and go back to hell, a state or place of mental suffering. And I don't want to go. And every now and then I end up there for a minute. But now I have a free will choice and I know it. And the moment I start the pain hits, before what I'd called pain, I didn't even know what pain was. I was so used to being angry and hurt all the time that I didn't know that there was anything else. Now I have joy, peace, and love most of the time. I don't care what other people think. And I love God with all my heart, mind, and soul. And any time that something gets between me and him, it hurts. Because then I start needing other people's approval. And it's too late for me. I can't go back. There's only one way for me to go. I'm kingdom bound, friend, because he's my king. And I love him with my whole heart, mind, and soul. And there's nobody on this earth that has anything to offer you like what he's got. Forgiveness and love is the greatest thing ever. And once you experience it, for you that haven't ever had it, won't be able to even comprehend what I'm talking about. It's something that a man can't find on his own. And a woman can't give it to you. If you need the woman in order to be whole, you don't have this. I'm telling you, my Father will make you whole. Then you'll be complimenting everyone else in your relationships, because instead of needing so much, you'll be able to give more because you need less. You'll be less needy. I don't know, it's a journey. But I'm telling you, friend, I just really suggest you go get on the journey. Because this kingdom, you don't have to be as old as me and go through a life of pride and having to be humbled and crushed under the weight that I did, if you're willing to use wisdom, and that is, go read what Jesus said, do what he asked, and believe that he told you the truth. And a greater truth will emerge. All right, friend, this didn't go anything like I thought it was going to, but it never really does, because I always ask God to speak for me and let him get it, because he knows what you need. I don't. So just know I love you because my Father loves you. That's it, period. All right. May God bless you and yours.